Hello, I'm Jerry Stewart. A wise man once said that success lies in your doing not what others consider to be great, but doing what you know to be right. And today, when we speak about success, we're usually talking about money and wealth and position. But the truth is this: success in life is really about what you do, who you are, and the money and wealth and position may or may not come. This audio presentation is about far more than financial success. It's about determining those right things in life to do and doing them. And now, overcoming. Fact: for those of us who live in America, we are truly blessed to be living our lives in America, the single greatest nation in the world. Fact: for those of us who live in America, we are truly blessed to live in a nation that gives us absolute freedom to be free to pursue our own dreams and desires. Fact: not only does America give us the freedom to pursue our own dreams and desires in life, it also gives us the greatest opportunity to make those dreams and desires come true because of our great economic success. Simply said, America is the single wealthiest nation in the world. So, if America is a nation which gives us the greatest opportunity for success, if this is true, then why is success so hard to find? And why do so many go through life and never find it? His name was Mr. Watson, Eugene Watson. He was my ninth grade science teacher. He was a strange sort of fellow, a little eccentric, a little off-center. And he was always giving us kids some science lesson: how we could make water run uphill, how to make a 3-inch egg squeeze into a 2-inch hole in a milk bottle, all with just a single match. Most everything that he showed us was amazing, but little did we know that he was teaching us about more than just science, a whole lot more. It was a beautiful spring day, a Monday, and that day, as we all shuffled into his classroom, there sat Mr. Watson with a sort of sly grin on his face. On his desk, there was a big glass jar. We all just milled around the room, talking, but he just sat there, silent. As we all sat down, Mr. Watson put his pointer finger to his lips and without a word, by his gesture, quieted us all down. The room became quiet, perfectly quiet. We all wondered, what is he up to? Then, without any word said, Mr. Watson pointed to that big glass jar. The jar was empty, we thought. Then he pointed to his ear, and we all followed his instruction. Through the silence, we all strained our ears to hear something, but there was nothing. But, oh, hold it. Yes, there was. It was this sound, this tiny sound of a tinkling, a thumping on that jar lid. What was it? We listened hard, and we looked even harder. And then we realized, and suddenly we saw it. The jar was not empty at all. It was full of fleas. Yeah, fleas. Hundreds of fleas. And the sound? All of those fleas were jumping with all their might, trying to get out of that jar. And as they jumped with all of their might to get out of that jar, they would hit their little heads on the lid of that jar and fall back down. It sounded like popcorn popping, over and over, non-stop, jumping, hitting, falling. As we all sat there, some of us rubbing our own heads, feeling their pain, Mr. Watson never said a word. Then, without a word said, Mr. Watson put away that jar and began his lecture for us that day. I tried hard to hear his words, his lecture, but I could not get my mind off of those fleas. Well, that next day, us kids came into Mr. Watson's biology class, and honestly, most of us had already forgotten what happened that previous day with the fleas. But when we walked into the classroom, there it was, the big glass jar on Mr. Watson's desk. And there he sat with his same silly grin, just sitting there, smiling. We all made our ways to our seats, and the room fell silent as we stared at that jar. At first, there was nothing. I could hear and see nothing. But then, as my eyes and ears began to focus, I could hear, I could see. There they were, the fleas. There they were. Doing what? Jumping with all of their might. Jumping, hitting their little heads on that lid and falling back down. And they would not stop. We were all mystified. But something else crossed our minds. Don't let those fleas out. They are mad and frustrated and hungry. Don't let them out. And then, same as before, without a single word uttered by Mr. Watson, he put the jar of fleas away and once again began his lecture. I remember thinking, is he trying to drive us all crazy? Well, that went on for 5 full days. Every day, the same scenario. Every day, the jumping, the tinking and thumping on that lid. The fleas just kept jumping. They would not give up. Then came the weekend. And as I sat down with my family for dinner on Sunday, I told them the story of Mr. Watson and his fleas. The whole wacky story. And the adults in our community who knew Eugene Watson all secretly wondered, had wacky Mr. Watson finally lost his mind? We would all find out on Monday. Well, Monday came, and us kids couldn't wait to get into our third period biology class to see what would happen next. As we all rushed in, there it was, same jar on his desk, Mr. Watson smiling, not a word. Oh no, we thought, would this insanity never stop? We couldn't take it any longer. We all yelled out, "What's going on? What are you doing? What is this really all about?" But before a word was answered, Mr. Watson reached for the jar. We all gasped. And then Mr. Watson did something crazy. He unscrewed the lid. "Oh no, get back," we said. "The hungry fleas will get on us and bite us. Get back." But Mr. Watson just sat there. And that's when we saw it. The exhausted, hungry little fleas were still jumping, but unbelievably, not one jumped out. Not one jumped out. They were all jumping, but only as high as the lid. But there was no lid. They were free to get out, and not one flea jumped out. How could that be? Why? Amazingly, unbelievably, in just 7 days, those fleas had been convinced that although they could still jump, but not any higher than that lid. Then Mr. Watson spoke these simple words. He said, "Boys and girls, don't ever let anyone convince you how high you can jump." Wow. And here I am, almost 50 years later, and I have never forgotten the amazing lesson of the fleas. Perhaps one of the single most powerful life lessons I have ever learned. Actually, Mr. Watson in that class all those years ago, he actually taught us kids 3 of what I call the 10 lessons for overcoming life. Learn these, use these, live these, and you will overcome. Life lesson number 1. You can't ever do or accomplish anything in life unless you strive to do it. Now notice that I didn't say try to do it. I said strive. So what's the difference? According to Webster's dictionary, to try is to, quote, make an attempt. But to strive, what is it to strive? Striving is, according to Webster's dictionary, quote, to devote serious effort or energy to struggle against an opposition. So you see, trying is just that. Oh, I'll try and see what happens. Probably nothing. But when I determine to devote my energy and a serious effort and to realize that I am struggling against someone, something, then my chances of overcoming that obstacle, my chances of success are so much higher. There's a huge difference. But hold it. Who is this opposition? Who or what are we struggling against? This brings me to life lesson 2. There will always be someone working to limit you. Now, did you notice that I didn't say working to stop you? I used the word limit. Most people don't really desire to stop your efforts. They just work to limit you. And some, maybe they don't even mean to do it, but they do. Ever heard the phrase, killing someone with your kindness? You don't want any harm or hardship to come to someone that you love, so you find a way to keep them from that hardship, and you kill whatever they could and should have become. Our nation today is full of weaklings, and so many are children. We want their lives to be easy and soft. We love them, so we help them to avoid or sidestep any obstacles, or even worse, we remove the obstacle ourselves. We talk them out of the striving. We say, find an easier route, find a clearer path, and they become that flea in that jar. It could be your parents, your spouse, your children, your friends. They think that they are helping you, working to help you. But what are they really doing? They are hindering you. They are becoming the obstacle you cannot overcome. And get this, they cause you to settle for less than you can do, less than you can be, and you do not overcome. When I was a young boy, about 8 or 9 years old, a few of us boys found a cocoon. As we placed it on the ground to get a better look, the cocoon began to move. There was something inside. It was a butterfly, and it was trying to get out. As we sat there waiting for it to break itself free, we could see its head, and it pushed and struggled and fought to get out. Well, 15 minutes passed, then 30 minutes, but he just couldn't get free. We thought, this little guy needs our help. So we so carefully tore the top of that cocoon open, and he began to make his way out. And when he did, we were all so impressed. He was a beautiful monarch butterfly. His wings were orange and black. He was beautiful. We all stared and marveled as he stood there for a long time, stretching himself, moving his wings, but he never really moved that much or even tried to fly. We thought, this guy must be sick. So we carefully scooped him up and placed him in an old shoebox, and I took him home with me. Well, by the next day, when I looked in that box, that butterfly was dead. We thought he must have been sickly. But when we told this story to our science teacher, she explained something very amazing. She told us that as the caterpillar inside the cocoon was busy changing to a butterfly, that he goes through a series of stages of development. And one of the crucial stages is the struggle involved with getting out of that cocoon. And that part of the struggle is vital to his survival. And the truth was this: the butterfly had to struggle. No matter how long it took, no matter how hard it was, he had to struggle to get out of that cocoon. And if he did not struggle, he would not live. And when we helped him to get out without that struggle, he simply died. So you see, as strange as it may seem, adversity and failure is good for us. And when we see to it that our children get everything they need without some struggle or adversity, although we think we are helping them, in reality, we are not. Because if our children never struggle, they'll probably never survive. What an amazing fact, and most don't even realize. Now, this brings me to life lesson number 3, and it's a tough one. Life lesson number 3. As the obstacles of life work to limit you, and as you strive to overcome these obstacles, sadly, it is very easy for you to be limited. In fact, it's amazing just how easy it is to limit you. Think about it. Take a weight scale and place heavy weights on both sides. Place them equally and the scale is in perfect balance. But then find the tiniest weight, weighing seemingly nothing. Place it on one side. And what happens? The scale tips that way. All of those weights, all of those factors, all working, and only the tiniest weight tips the scale. And it was easy. And this tipping can take place even by the smallest thought or word. How? When I was a young boy, I remember my dad taking me to the circus. It was one of those old-fashioned circuses with the big top tent. Before we went inside to sit down, we sort of strolled along, looking at all the animals. Most were in cages, but the largest one, the elephant, a huge elephant, was not caged. It stood there, swaying back and forth, but it did not move. It just stood there. On its big leg was a simple, small rope, and the rope was attached to a stake that had been driven into the ground. Now, that whole picture fascinated me. How was it that this giant elephant didn't just swing its huge leg, break the rope, pull up the stake, and just stroll away? But it didn't. Why? My dad told me why. He said that when the elephant was just a baby, it was captured and immediately a big strong chain was put on its ankle and attached to a metal bar hammered deep into the ground. And for days, maybe weeks, maybe months, that baby elephant would fight to get away, but he could not do it. And how long did they keep him shackled to that strong chain? Until the elephant was convinced that it could not get away. When it was convinced of its limitations, it was defeated, it just gave up. And now that day, as we watched, that giant elephant had just become indifferent. He is held in place by this tiny rope and a small stake. The power of that one extra weight, that one extra word or thought. Wow. Now, that may work with animals, but what about people? Can what other people say or think limit you? The year was 1954. A man named Bannister was about to attempt the impossible, or was it? On May the 6th, 1954, long-distance runner Roger Bannister set out to do what some insisted was impossible, to run 1 mile in less than 4 minutes. It had never been done, ever, and it was cut and dried, settled, absolutely impossible to do. So what did Roger Bannister do? Did he hear the words and just accept? Or did he? On that day, May the 6th, 1954, Roger Bannister ran the mile in less than 4 minutes. It was done. That's amazing. But what happened after that was even more amazing. You see, once Roger Bannister proved it could be done, in just that next year, 37 runners broke the 4-minute barrier. They ran the mile in less than 4 minutes. And today, in the New York Fifth Avenue Mile Run, the runners who finish last usually still run the mile in less than 4 minutes. What would have happened if Roger Bannister had listened? No one knows, because he didn't. Now you say, wow, how sad that a few naysayers can change a person so easily. But you say, that'll never happen to me. I'll always go forward, always follow my heart and my dreams. That's great. But there is another obstacle, another block, that is somewhat different, but in some ways it's more powerful, more formidable, and possibly the biggest single obstacle to overcome. It's life lesson number 4, and it's best stated by famous American Helen Keller. all the way back in the 1800s, after traveling all around the world and the nation, she said this, quote, "Science may have found a cure for most evils, but it has found no remedy for the worst of them all, the apathy of human beings." Life lesson number 4, one of your greatest obstacles in life is your own apathy. Now notice that she didn't say enemy, one of our greatest enemies. Helen Keller said evils. Wow, evil. That's a pretty serious word, especially when you understand what it takes for something to be evil. Evil is defined as, quote, something or someone who brings sorrow, distress, calamity, all very bad things. But based on that definition, why is apathy so evil? How can simple indifference be evil? It's because apathy goes far beyond simple indifference. Apathy is a lack of feeling. Follow this. The root word in apathy is path. And when you have a path, you have a direction. You're going somewhere. But put the letter A in front of any root word, and it now means lack of, null, void, no. So apathy doesn't mean that you're going down a wrong or indifferent path. Apathy means that you have no path at all. You are so disinterested, so into yourself, that you don't even care to have a path. It's a horrible, disgusting word, and one of the most powerful obstacles you will ever face in your life. And here's the real scary thought. Right now, you may have apathy in your life right now, and you don't even know it because of your indifference. One last thought, one last word on Helen Keller that you may not know. Helen Keller was born both deaf and blind. She was born with the inability to see or hear anything. Yet, Helen Keller, with all of her senses limitation, Helen Keller could see and hear apathy. But most in America today cannot. Can you? Now, this brings me to life lesson number 5. And now we're getting into the deepest part of our journey, the part that is going to hurt, the part of yourself that is in the deepest part of your soul. This comes to you in the form of a question. What is your most dangerous possession? Yeah, what is the most dangerous thing that you possess? Now, when asked this question, most would answer a gun, a fast car, a really mean, vicious dog. But it's none of these. So what is your most dangerous possession? Here it comes, so don't miss it. Your most dangerous possession is your ability to choose. Life lesson number 5, one of your greatest obstacles in life is the free choices you possess, your own free will. But why is your own free will your most dangerous possession? Just that, because you are free to choose whatever you want. It's like the flip side, the downside of freedom. We say, wow, I'm free to choose what I want, free to do anything, whether it is good or bad. Even God says it. In the Bible, he says, I place before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Then he says, choose life. Make the right choice. Choose the right way. But we don't always choose the right and best way. And here's the sad and sobering part of this life lesson number 5. Choose the right way. Do the right thing, because what you do becomes who you are. You are what you do, and what you think, what you say becomes unimportant, because you are what you do. But you say, I can do whatever and then go back or change my mind or change my way. Usually not. Life is like a powerful drug, and once you start down a path, once you're on a particular path in your life, most of the time you can never go back. The gate is shut. The bridge has been burned. And even if you can go back, what you have done is there to meet you. And even if you go back, your history, what you've sown, is the crop that's waiting for you. There once was a young boy who lived with his father on their farm, and every day the father would give instructions and guidance to his son, teachings and instructions, and each day the boy chose not to take his father's advice. In fact, not only did he not follow his father's teachings and advice, he would actually go the other way. He was determined to take his own way. So one day, his father took him out into the field, and in that field stood an old wooden post. The father handed his son a hammer and a bucket of nails. He said, "Son, this post is your life, and from now on, starting today, every time you go against my instructions, every time that you do a wrong, you're going to hammer a nail into this post." But he said, "Every time you listen and learn and make the right choice, you'll take out a nail." Well, the young boy continued on his own way, ignored his father's wise counsel, and every day they would walk out together to that back field, and the boy would drive a nail into that post. This went on and on and on, until one day, as the boy went to drive another nail into that post, he looked and noticed and realized the post was absolutely full of nails. That post, his life, was so full of wrong choices that it was full. It was full. And at that moment, the boy, in his head, he realized he made a decision. He repented. And that next day, to his father's absolute shock and dismay, the boy listened and followed and chose the right way. And just like they had done every day before, they walked out to the field, but this time the boy didn't drive a nail into that post, he took one out. It felt good. The boy set himself on an all-new course, and for the next days and weeks and months to come, the nails began to come out of that post, until one day he and his father stood in front of that post and only one nail remained. As the boy took that hammer and pulled that last nail out, his father looked on with pride. He was so proud of his son's new life and his good choices. But as the boy took out that last nail, instead of being excited and happy, he was quiet and somber. He turned to his father and said, "Father, it is true. I have made the right choices. All of the nails are now gone. But Father," he said, "though the nails are gone, the holes are still there." And this is why the choices in life we make are so crucial, because the wrong may be made right, but the scars, the holes, are still there. Wow. So why are most people in life going through their lives, not able to overcome their obstacles in their lives? Why are most failing and falling oh so short of their goals and dreams and aspirations? Number one, you can't ever do or accomplish anything in life unless you strive to do it. Trying, simply trying, is just not enough. You will fall short. You must devote a serious effort, all of your energy, knowing that an opposition is going to struggle against you. Simply said, if all you plan to do is try, don't even waste your effort. Not only will you fail, you will lose hope in yourself and in your own abilities. Life lesson number 2, be prepared. There will always be someone, something coming to work against you. Not necessarily to defeat or stop you, but even worse, to limit you. And the reason that most fail to overcome this obstacle is that they are watching guard, waiting for that obstacle to come out of the dark after them, when the real obstacle might be standing right beside you. It was Abraham Lincoln who said of our America, "Our nation will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it will be because we destroy ourselves." Wow. Life lesson number 3, as the obstacles of life work to limit you, sadly, it is very easy to hold you back. Why? Because once you are convinced that you cannot do something, you will quit trying. One of the greatest inventors in our American history, in the history of our world, was a man named Thomas Edison. He invented the light bulb. We all know that. But what you may not know is that it took Thomas Edison over 10,000 experiments to finally make the light bulb work. That's 10,000 times, 10,000 failures. And as the words of his failure became news to his fellow scientists, they laughed at him. He was a laughingstock. But did he quit? Of course not. We have the light bulb. But later in life, Thomas Edison made this remarkable observation. He said, "Many of life's failures are people who do not realize just how close they were to success when they just gave up." How did Thomas Edison know that was true? Because he was almost one of those who was oh so close but quit. But he did not. Life lesson number 4. One of your greatest obstacles in life is apathy. In fact, remember, blind and deaf Helen Keller said that apathy is our world's greatest evil, not just an obstacle, an evil, and that the greatest single power that apathy can have on us all is that we can be apathetic and not even know it. Life lesson number 5, your freedom, your free choice to choose your way in life can very well destroy you. Why? Because what you do becomes who you are. Okay, you say, I get it. I get all that. And I want to overcome. I want to strive. I do strive. I know that striving is hard. I know how easy it is to quit striving, to just be satisfied with mediocre. And I don't want to be apathetic, to become indifferent, to become unemotional, to have no path and not even care. And I want to choose right. How do I get there? That brings us to life lesson number 6. This one may be the hardest of all, so give it a chance before you reject it. Here goes. Hardship is your friend. Life lesson number 6. Hardship is your friend. You say, what? No way. Yep. If you want to succeed, settle in your mind right now. It goes against most everything that you're being taught in life, but hardship must come if you want to succeed, if you want to overcome. How is this possible, and how should we respond? How should we act when adversity comes into our lives? In the Bible, the book of James, it tells us just how we should respond to adversity. It says, quote, "When all kinds of trials come into your lives, my brothers, don't resent them as intruders, but welcome them as friends. Realize they have come to test your endurance, but let the process go until that endurance is fully developed, and you will find you have become men and women of mature character." Remember what Thomas Edison said after failing 10,000 times? He said, "Many of life's failures are people who did not realize just how close they were to success when they just gave up." But can someone actually use failure as a tool to reach their success? It's been said that the freedom to fail is vital if you're going to succeed. President Ronald Reagan said, "What should happen when you make a mistake is this. You take your knocks, you learn your lessons, then you move on." And that is so true. And each time we try and fail and get up and try again, we become stronger. One of our founding fathers, Edmund Burke, said this, "He who wrestles with us strengthens our nerves and sharpens our skills. Our antagonist is our helper." So you see, as strange as it may seem, and as much as we are taught to the contrary, adversity and failure are good for us. And if we design our lives to take the path of ease with no hardship, although we think we are helping ourselves, in reality, we are not. Why? Because if we do not struggle, we will never be strong enough to overcome the obstacles coming in our lives. One anonymous poet said it this way, "Looking back, it seems to me all the grief which had to be left me when the pain was o'er, richer than I'd been before. And as we are in the midst of the difficulties of life, what are we to do? What are we to be doing? And that is it. We are to be doing. My dad used to say, Jerry, why do you suppose God gave you only one mouth, but he gave you two hands? Because he doesn't want you to just talk. He wants you to do, to act, to move. And that is life lesson 7. Don't just talk, do. And our biggest problem is that we usually want to do, but we don't know what to do. It was General George Schwarzkopf who said, the truth of the matter is this: you always know the right thing to do. The hard part is doing it. But most people today are standing around waiting to see what they have to say. But just who is the they we are always talking about when we say, this is what they say? Why are we so quick to simply accept and follow what they say? Why don't we do something ourselves? Once there were 4 people named somebody, everybody, nobody, and anybody. An important job needed to be done, and everybody was sure that somebody would do it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did. Well, somebody got mad because it was everybody's job, but everybody thought that anybody could do it and that somebody would do it. But nobody realized that everybody thought somebody would do it. And then finally, everybody got mad at somebody because nobody did what anybody could have done. How true. An old Chinese proverb puts it this way: if the world is to be brought to order, my nation must first be changed. If my nation is to be changed, my hometown must be made over. If my hometown is to be reordered, my family must first be set right. And if my family is to be set right, it must start with me. You see, when you walk what you talk, people listen. But just what is the right thing to do? We know the right path to choose. It's just easier and safe to go where everyone else is going. And they must be right. Look how many of them there are going that way. Not always so. It was William Penn who said, what is wrong, even if everybody else is doing it. And what is right is still right, even if no one else is doing it. And realize this: as you do, people will believe and will follow. They may doubt what you say, but they will never doubt what you do, and they will follow. So realize that in your doing what you do, you may become an obstacle to someone else. The story has been told of a blind man sitting on a street corner one very dark night. He was holding a lantern. A passerby saw the blind man and stopped to ask about the lantern. Why do you need a lantern if you are blind? The blind man's reply was simple and powerful: so that no one will stumble over me. And that's exactly what a good example does. It helps others to see the way. And by that same token, a bad example causes others to stumble. But does our good moral example make a difference to those who don't agree with us? Absolutely. In fact, your example, good or bad, has a real live effect on everyone who crosses your path. In the 18th century, there was a philosopher named David Hume, and when it came to God, he was a skeptic and wanted nothing to do with religion. So you can imagine how surprised and confused his colleagues were when he began to attend church services faithfully every week and listen to the sermons preached by a Scottish minister by the name of John Brown. Well, after weeks of his attending church services, those who knew him best just had to ask, what was an outspoken skeptic doing going to hear messages about that very topic he was so skeptical about? Amazingly, here's what the skeptic David Hume had to say about the minister John Brown. He said, I don't believe everything he says, but what John Brown says, he believes. And once a week, I like to hear a man talk who believes what he says. Whatever you do, good or bad, someone will always follow you. So go and do something good. Now, life lesson number 8. To overcome the obstacles of life, you must have a plan. Now, we talked earlier about this ugly word apathy, and how apathy is not just having a path to follow, but not even caring to have a path. Or you may have a path. You may have taken a path, and you are on it right now. But how much effort did you expend to make this path? Life is a lot like a road map. Oh, there may be twists and turns and detours, but if you want to travel to the East Coast from most anywhere in our America, you don't travel west to get there, because you probably won't get there. So ask yourself this question: have I made a plan, a real plan for my life? And is the plan I am on now, is it a one-day plan to get me a few hundred miles, or is it a well-thought-out plan? Have I studied the map carefully so that I know the path I'm on will get me there? A wise man once said, "You never plan to fail, you just fail to plan." And let me mention one thing here. It's not a plan unless it's written down. If you don't have your plan for your direction in life, if you don't have it written down in detail, then you don't have a plan. An unwritten plan is an obstacle of life you will not overcome. So we're almost through. We're now at life lesson number 9 of 10. If you need a break, if you need to stretch or walk around a minute, then do it now, because these next 2 obstacles, these final 2, are huge. Okay, ready? Life lesson number 9. Don't doubt yourself. Don't doubt yourself. Self-doubt is one of our biggest obstacles that most never overcome. Why? Because we are being constantly reminded by others that success in life is all about ability. Now, it is true that natural ability can get you a long way down the road. But the interesting thing is that most people in America don't really have a lot of natural ability. Then how is it that we've been so successful? I have an older brother, 4 years older, and when we were growing up, he had a tremendous amount of ability. He was a talented athlete who excelled in every sport he tried. In high school, he was picked to the all-district football team, and he received a full scholarship to a major university. He went on to be captain of his college football team. Then there was me. I loved all the sports, but when the coaches looked at me, they were thinking of my brother. After all, I was his brother, so I must be as good as he was. But I wasn't. When it came to sports, I was only average, and that was hard for me, living in his shadow, always being reminded that my brother was so much better than I was. So I tried harder and harder, but I never got that much better. That bummed me out until one day I realized that I needed to quit trying to be my brother and just be me. I began to pursue other interests, and I got involved with music and started a band, even cut a couple of records. But my point is this: you'll never go anywhere in life if you spend your life just following or trying to be someone else. It's like the man who was traveling late one night with his family when they hit a terrible snowstorm. He couldn't see a thing. As he strained to find the main road, he noticed a snowplow ahead. Surely if he followed the plow, he would make it. So for the next hour, he stayed as best he could right behind the plow as he drove through that blizzard. And then the plow stopped, and the driver ran back to the car. "Mister," the driver said, "just where are you going?" "To Montana." "Well, you won't get there following me," he said. "I'm clearing the snow off this parking lot." And finally, the man could see. He'd spent the last hour following the snowplow as it traveled in circles around that parking lot. And if we spend our lives following someone else, pursuing their dreams, trying to be them, someday we'll wake up and realize we're just going nowhere. You see, life is more than skills and talents. Accomplishment is more than just ability. The real strengths of success are patience and persistence. And if you're spending all your time looking for your own natural abilities, you may be looking in the wrong place. It's like the man one night standing under a streetlight, searching for something. A policeman saw him and decided to help him look. He had lost his keys while walking his dog, and now he was stuck. As they searched under that streetlight for half an hour, the policeman finally asked the obvious question, "Are you sure you dropped your keys here?" "Oh, no," the man replied. "I lost my keys over there." The policeman was puzzled. "Then why are we looking here?" The man replied, "Because this is where the light is." You see, sometimes opportunity is not in the safety and convenience of the light. Sometimes you have to step out into the darkness and just try. And most of all, do not doubt. And finally, life lesson number 10. And this life lesson is like dessert. When I was a kid, my mom would make the most delicious desserts. But the rule was pretty simple. First, there was the meal. It was good. It gave me strength and energy to keep going. But my mom always saved the best until last, the dessert. Here's life lesson 10, the dessert. Give all that you have, all that you are, to God. Why? Because you need help. And He not only can help you, He wants to help you. You see, natural ability is great, but it's really a very small part of being successful. In fact, ability can actually work against a person, because if everything comes too easy, that person never really learns how to persist. We've talked about how life is made up of failure. You show me a person who has succeeded, and I'll show you a person who has failed many times. A few years back, one of the greatest baseball players in history, Ted Williams, passed away. He was an unbelievable hitter, the last major league player to bat over 400 in a season. But think about this. To bat 400, 60% of the time, Ted Williams failed. You see, it's not failure that defeats us. It's when we quit getting up and trying again. That is when we become defeated. But just where do we get the power to keep going? Well, some may not want to admit it, but it's clear to me. The strength and the power inside me that keeps me going through the hard times of life is a power given to me by Almighty God. And if you think about it, God is all about action and accomplishment. The Bible is full of scriptures that encourage us to keep running the race, fighting the battle. One verse says, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." All things? Wow! One of my favorite hymns says simply this: "Nothing is impossible when you put your trust in God." And when we talk about inventions, well, God is quite an inventor himself. But He doesn't just invent, He creates. And every idea and innovation which we invent and develop, it's all based on the very way that God invented this world. And He gives us the power to go on. And just what kind of people does God like to work with? Ordinary people, the average guy. You may not know this, but up until just a few years ago, I had never even done one radio program. And here I am today with programs that are broadcast all across America. I've never had any training in broadcasting, but then just how did I get here? Well, one day I heard that my local station in Bellingham, Washington, wanted listeners to submit editorials to be aired on their station. I've always been a guy with opinions, so I submitted an editorial and they used it. And so I did another one and another one, each time expecting they would call and politely say, "No thanks," but they never did. Then, one day, the program director called and asked me if I wanted to guest host their morning show. I just about fell out of my chair, but I said, okay. Well, when I showed up that morning, I was asked, "Where are your people?" I didn't know what she meant. She explained that usually when a guest host comes on the show, they bring someone to interview. I said, "No, I just brought myself. I have a topic, and I'll just talk with the listeners when they call in." And that's when she dropped a bombshell. She said, "Sometimes nobody calls." My life flashed before me. I looked for the closest exit, but then I thought, no, I'm going to see this through. And instead of panicking, I prayed. And when the engineer pointed at me to start the show, I was just myself, and the show went fine. Shortly after the show finished, I received a call. He asked, "Was that you on the air today?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I heard your voice and immediately knew it had to be either you or Gomer Pyle." Hey, thanks a lot. Well, the story is much longer, but the short version is this. I was asked to come back and host again, and I really liked it. Then I was allowed to pre-tape a show for Independence Day, and one day a syndications company heard my programs and helped me nationally syndicate these shows. But my point here is simply this. God uses ordinary people, just like you and me, and He gives us the power to do great things. Just look at some of the people in the Bible. Moses didn't want to be God's man to talk with the Pharaoh. He said he had a speech impediment, but God sent him anyway. And with God's help, the mighty Pharaoh had no trouble understanding what Moses had to say. And look at King David. When the prophet Samuel searched the land looking for the next king of Israel, he came to Jesse's house, and he asked to see all of his sons. But Jesse left David out. Clearly, his own father didn't think that David was king material. It was not until Samuel asked, "Are these all the sons you have?" that Jesse told him about David. Jesse, David's own father, did not see David's potential to do great things, but God did. Even Jesus himself didn't pick the most gifted and educated men to be his disciples. In fact, he picked men who were so ordinary that later, when two of his disciples, Peter and John, talked to the religious council, they were literally amazed just how boldly and powerfully they spoke. Why does God use ordinary people when there are so many gifted and extraordinary people to choose from? I believe it's because many times God has a hard time using people who are too full of themselves because they don't leave any room for Him. And people who spend their life doing things in their own power truly miss an opportunity to do even greater things. Life lesson number 10, give all that you are, all that you strive and want to be, give it to God. He will help you. Wow, there it is, what I call the 10 lessons of life. Your 10 ways to overcome the greatest obstacles of your life. I'm Jerry Stewart. Thanks for hearing me out. And know this, you can overcome. May God bless America, and may God bless you.